I think it's got to be something that grabs you. It's got to be something that challenges you, rather than, you know, the old chocolate box art. It's got to be something that has, I think, something intrinsically in the work itself, either in subject matter or in content and concept, that actually allows you to think about the work, and it actually challenges you or provokes you in some sort of way. I think those are the most exciting pieces of work.
In artistic analysis, the term textual art is used to describe artwork bearing a strong visual element, but also a strong linguistic element. Gerry Copas is an Auckland-based artist who considers himself a text painter. He is one of a series of modern artists who use text as subject matter, presenting wistful or imperative statements to the viewer in various ways. Gerry was a very successful graphic designer, running companies in London and Auckland over a 25-year career. Later in life, he decided to pursue his lifelong dream of becoming an artist, and completed a 4-year Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at Auckland University's Elam School of Fine Arts in 2007. Fresh off the back of a series of successful exhibitions at some of Auckland's most renowned galleries, he is close to completing his latest series of works.
Have events and changes in your life influenced the way you make art?
Yes, I think they have, actually. I think anything, excuse me, anything that you go through, I think has an effect on what you paint and how you paint it. And I think my work over the years has changed simply because I've got to understand it a little better, and I've got to appreciate what it is that I'm trying to do with my work. And I think part of that is the fact that the work is not just about the language, but it's also about the way the language is presented and the way I execute it onto the substrate, the canvas or the board or whatever I'm using. And I think that for me it's a relationship between language, the text and the verbal. So there's a sort of a push-pull thing happening there, where I'm investigating what it is that we say, what it is that we read, what it is that we show. And so the work itself has this thing about it that, do you read the work or do you view the work? It has no object, unlike a landscape or something similar. So it ends up being a question that, if you're actually looking at the work, you have to basically decipher something in the work that I produce. It's a little bit puzzle-like, and so it's presented in such a way that its intent is to be like that. I want to challenge people. I want them to read it, but I also want them to be challenged in such a way that they have to spend time with the work and question, well, are they looking at it or are they reading it? And does that really matter in the end? You know, what does it conjure up in their mind anyway when they read it? It's very easy to paint something with a text behind it, and that will conjure up some sort of vision in people's minds anyway. I like the hands-on. You know, there are artists who work in painting, text, language, who would have others paint the work for them, and that's fine. That's a conceptual way of doing it. But for me, that was not good enough. I like to see that the hand of the artist is actually in the work, and you can even see some nuances and some irregularities in the work. You know, there might be a few blemishes in the work, but it's the hand of the artist that I think is important.
What are your religious beliefs as they pertain to your work? Because you've been known to use Bible quotes and things as the basis for some of your paintings.
I suppose coming up through a religious background, which I've sort of went through and come out the other side, as it were, I still find that some of those biblical passages which I use in my work have a good foundation, a fairly firm foundation in terms of them being established scriptures, etc., etc. And I find that easy to work with, simply because then it allows me to use that material in such a way where the languages become two, in actual fact, because I use one layer to talk about one thing and another layer to talk about something else, and those two layers are painted in different colours, so the conversation, it becomes a bit of a conversation point in that sense.
How's your graphic design background influence your artwork? Being text-based, I imagine some instincts and the like from
yeah, that's huge. That's huge, really, in that sense. One of the things that they were sort of trying to drive out of me at Elam was to lose that whole graphic design background. and you know, sort of be much more conceptual and experiment and so on, which I did for the first few years, and but text always tended to come back into it. And from a graphic design background, I was working mainly in brands and packaging design, but I was always interested in typography and lettering and so on. And coming from the old days of before computers, where you know, logos and lots of type were actually hand drawn because you didn't have computers to do it. There were a lot of people who were very skilled at drawing type and painting type, and probably being in London in the 70s was one of the most exciting times I found. Yeah, that was brilliant. So, but we won't go there. That's another story for another program.
All right.